Maybe you've been waiting for a sign from heaven, but heaven has been waiting for you to stop, just for a moment, because the truth is, sometimes the Holy Spirit doesn't speak louder. He just waits until we finally become quiet enough to hear. You've been praying, you've been serving, you've been carrying everyone else's burdens like they were your own. And still, a silence lingers between your soul and the divine. Not because God left, but because he's a guest, not an intruder. The Holy Spirit doesn't break in. He waits for invitation, and some doors are not locked by sin, but by noise of the mind, of control, of old fears disguised as responsibility. You keep saying, if I don't do it, no one will. But who told you that? God or your wounds? This message is not here to scold you. It's here to free you, because you're not failing spiritually. You're just exhausted from playing a role God never asked you to carry. And maybe, just maybe, the Holy Spirit hasn't filled the room, because your hands are still full of everything you won't let go. Today, we're not chasing emotions. We're not begging for signs. We're learning how to create a home for the Spirit to dwell in, not with noise, not with panic, not with perfection, but with habits. Holy habits, hidden habits, habits that transform your life in silence. These 7 habits are not loud. They don't need applause. They don't demand spotlight. But they invite the Holy Spirit in, slowly, deeply, and permanently. So if you've ever asked, why don't I feel God like I used to? Or why does heaven feel so far, even when I'm praying every day? This is for you, not to shame you, not to fix you, but to remind you the Spirit hasn't left. You've just been standing in the doorway, too busy, too burdened to open it. And maybe it's time to unclench your hands, time to rest your soul, time to let silence be sacred again, because the Spirit doesn't need your performance. He longs for your surrender. Let's talk about the first habit, the one we rarely name, but often live in, the habit of control. 1. Beware of the habit of controlling everything disguised as responsibility. Some burdens wear masks, and one of the heaviest is the mask of control, wrapped in the language of duty, covered by the appearance of faithfulness. But let's tell the truth. There is a line between being responsible and being terrified that everything will fall apart if you're not the one holding it all together. That line is where the Holy Spirit waits. You say it out loud like a badge of honor, if I don't do it, no one will. But underneath that phrase, there's fear. A fear that God might not show up. A fear that if you let go, everything you've been holding will collapse. But here's the sacred tension. The Spirit cannot move freely in a heart that refuses to trust Him with what it can't control. He doesn't compete for space. He waits, He watches, and sometimes the very effort you're making to keep it all under control is the thing silencing His voice, because He's not attracted to your efficiency, He's drawn to your surrender. There is a form of unbelief that doesn't sound like doubt. It sounds like calendars and task lists. It hides inside hyper-organization. It dresses up like prudence, but underneath it's just fear with a better outfit. Because when you organize everything around your own capacity, you're no longer waiting on God. You're managing Him. And maybe, if you're honest, there's something you've never truly placed in His hands. Not because you don't want to trust, but because you've forgotten how. Somewhere along the journey, you became the fixer, the planner, the rescuer, and it worked until it didn't, until it became too heavy, until it dried up your soul. So ask yourself, quietly, sincerely, what have I never really released? What decision, what person, what fear have I kept close, just in case God didn't show up the way I wanted? The Holy Spirit isn't asking you to give up wisdom. He's asking you to stop replacing Him with it, because true responsibility doesn't fear surrender. It leads you to it. And in that surrender, in that holy letting go, the Spirit finally has room to breathe in you again. Let's keep going, because there's another habit, one that seems holy from the outside, but without this next step, your heart will never fully hear the Spirit. 2. Inner silence as a condition for listening to the Spirit's guidance. We often say we want to hear God. We cry out for His voice, beg for His guidance, fast for clarity. But still, silence, and the more desperate we become, the louder the noise inside us grows. That's the irony. Most people don't hear the Holy Spirit, not because He's not speaking, but because they've never truly stopped to listen. There's a noise that lives in the soul. It's the sound of unfinished prayers, anxious thoughts, fears that keep looping in the background like a song you didn't choose but can't turn off. And that noise builds walls that even the softest whisper of the Spirit can't pass through, somewhere in the rush to fix, to pray louder, to worship harder. We forgot the sacredness of stillness, but God never stopped valuing it. From the very beginning, He moved in stillness. He created in silence. He breathed into dust, not with thunder, but with breath. And the Spirit still moves that way, not with force, with presence. So when someone says, God never speaks to me, what they might mean is, I've never made space long enough to hear Him, because silence isn't empty. It's pregnant with revelation when you approach it with surrender. Anxiety, though, is loud. It demands answers now. It wants timelines and signs and confirmation after confirmation. But spiritual sensitivity isn't born in panic. It's cultivated in patience. And if you're always pressing God for immediate answers, you'll miss the invitation to simply be with Him. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to feel everything. But you do have to pause, and not just once. Make it a rhythm. 10 minutes of silence, not scrolling, not reading, not doing, just being. And in that space, don't perform. Just ask one question, honestly, humbly. Holy Spirit, what are you trying to say that I keep talking over? Because the voice of God rarely interrupts. He speaks in the waiting, in the quiet, in the places where everything else falls away and all that's left is Him and you. Let's go deeper, because once you've made room with silence, something sacred begins to shift, and what you choose to carry in that space matters. The next habit will show you why. 3. Real gratitude, the invisible habit that aligns you with the move of the Spirit. There's a reason why the Holy Spirit gravitates toward grateful hearts, not because they're louder in praise, but because they carry an atmosphere where heaven feels at home. Gratitude changes the spiritual climate. It doesn't ignore pain, it invites grace into it. And yet, how easily our prayers turn into complaints dressed as devotion. We say we're crying out, but sometimes we're just rehearsing everything that hasn't gone our way. Demanding, questioning, bargaining, hoping our desperation will force God's hand. But that's not how the Spirit moves. He doesn't respond to pressure. He responds to posture. A grateful heart is not always an emotional one. You won't always feel thankful. You won't always wake up full of joy and inspiration. But that's where the power of gratitude begins, when it becomes a spiritual decision, not a temporary feeling. Gratitude is spiritual resistance. It's choosing to say, God is still good while you're still in the desert. It's whispering, you are faithful, when the answer hasn't come. And that kind of faith, quiet, consistent, unshaken, that's what draws the Holy Spirit closer. Because the Spirit doesn't need your situation to be fixed to move. He just needs the door of your heart open. Think of Paul, imprisoned, beaten, forgotten, and yet filled, not with rage, not with resentment, but with praise. He sang in the dark, not to get out, but because the Spirit was already in. Gratitude made that cell a sanctuary, and that's what the Spirit is waiting for in your life. Not perfection, not breakthrough, but a heart that says thank you even when nothing around you changes. Because gratitude shifts you from performance to presence, from control to communion. So ask yourself, have my prayers been full of gratitude or just filled with demands? And if the answer is hard to face, you're not condemned, you're invited. Invited back into the quiet power of a thankful heart. Invited into the kind of faith that doesn't shake when life does. Invited to host the Spirit, even when you don't feel Him, because where gratitude lives, the Spirit stays. And the next habit will show why emotions alone can't replace His presence. 4. The spiritual error of confusing emotional excitement with the presence of the Spirit. There's a kind of spiritual confusion that feels like fire, but leaves no warmth. It looks like passion. It sounds like breakthrough. But when the moment fades, so does the peace. That's because not every emotional surge is a move of the Spirit. And not every goosebump means God spoke. We live in a world that worships feelings. And sadly, that mindset has crept into our walk with God. You hear people say, I felt the Spirit so strong, I got chills, I cried, I shook. And yes, the Spirit can touch the body. But He is not limited to emotion. In fact, His most powerful work is often invisible, because sometimes what we call the Holy Spirit is just a reaction to music, lighting, loneliness, or a deep need to feel something real again. And while those moments can be meaningful, they are not proof of His presence. The truest sign of the Spirit is not the height of your emotion, it's the depth of your peace. You can be crying and be in the Spirit. You can be silent and be in the Spirit. But the key is what remains after the song fades, after the sermon ends, after the crowd is gone. What's left? If all that's left is emptiness, confusion, or the need for another high, then maybe what you felt wasn't Him. Maybe it was you, aching for comfort, hoping for something to lift the weight, and there's no shame in that. But it's time to be honest about it, because the Holy Spirit doesn't entertain. He inhabits. He doesn't stir you for show. He roots you for growth. And when the Spirit moves, He leaves evidence, conviction, clarity, direction, peace that passes understanding. So here's the real test, not what you felt during the moment, but what fruit remained after it. Did your character shift? Did your love deepen? Did your heart become softer, more patient, more surrendered? Because the Spirit doesn't just touch your skin, He transforms your soul. And if you're chasing the thrill but missing the transformation, you're confusing His presence with your own emotional needs. Let that settle for a moment. Let it confront you without crushing you. Because God is not mad that you've been emotional. He just wants you to know there's more. There's a deeper move, a steadier fire, a quieter strength, and it's found not in the shout, but in what stays after the sound. Let's move forward. Because there's a kind of inner cleansing the Spirit longs to do, but it only happens when we stop holding on to the people who hurt us. 5. Practice silent forgiveness, the habit that clears the space for the Spirit to dwell. Some walls are not built with bricks. They're made of memories, of quiet betrayals, of words never apologized for, of wounds that never fully healed. And we think we've moved on because we're not talking about it anymore. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just buried pain. And here's the truth. Resentment, even when silent, takes up space. Space that the Holy Spirit longs to fill. But He won't compete with bitterness. Not because He's afraid of your pain, but because His presence brings freedom, and bitterness demands captivity. You can pray, you can fast, you can cry out for breakthrough. But if your heart is still holding on to what someone did, said, didn't do, never said, then your spirit is still entangled, and the Spirit won't dwell where chains are being cherished. Forgiveness is not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's not about excusing the other person. It's not even about reconciliation, not always. It's about release. It's about letting go of the weight they put on you, so the Spirit can put something holy in its place. Jesus showed us that. On the cross, bleeding, rejected, abandoned, he still whispered, "Father, forgive them." Before the resurrection, there was that release. Before the glory, there was surrender. He didn't wait for an apology. He forgave in the silence. And that silence became sacred. And maybe that's what your soul needs now. Not another confrontation. Not a perfect apology. But a moment alone with God, where you finally say, "I release them." Even if your voice shakes, even if your heart resists, even if it takes more than one prayer, start there, because the Spirit moves where mercy flows. You don't have to feel ready, you just have to be willing. Because forgiveness isn't a one-time feeling, it's a repeated decision, a daily cleansing, a quiet act of spiritual warfare that breaks invisible chains. And each time you choose it, you're making more room for the Spirit to dwell. So ask yourself, what have I been protecting that's actually poisoning me? Who have I refused to release, thinking it was justice, when it was just pride? Because the Holy Spirit wants to move freely, but he needs your heart to be a space of peace, not war. And forgiveness, even the silent kind, rebuilds that peace from the inside out. Now let's move toward time itself. Because some delays aren't from the devil, they're from our own impatience with God's process. 6. Sensitivity to God's timing. The habit of not anticipating. Some of the deepest pain in your life didn't come from waiting too long. It came from moving too soon, from praying and then panicking, from trusting God until the silence lasted longer than expected. That's when we reach for shortcuts. That's when we start building Ishmaels while waiting for Isaacs. The Holy Spirit operates on divine timing, not emotional urgency. He doesn't rush just because we're anxious. He doesn't move faster just because we're tired. And that's hard to accept when your heart is longing, your prayers feel unanswered, and your hope is wearing thin. But impatience can delay what only surrender can release. Some of us think we're being spiritual, fasting more, praying louder, asking again and again. But deep down, it's just another form of control, a way to manage God, a way to keep our fears quiet by staying busy in faith. But faith is not always movement. Sometimes it's stillness with trust. There's a quiet difference between waiting in faith and waiting in frustration. One says, "I know you're working even if I don't see it." The other says, "Why haven't you done it yet?" And the Spirit knows the difference, even when our words sound the same. Think of Abraham. God gave a promise. But when the promise took too long, Sarah offered a shortcut. And what was born from that impatience, Ishmael, was not the answer. It was a consequence, a delay, a disruption that could have been avoided if faith had waited just a little longer. You may be standing in a season that feels late, but heaven is never late. God is not delaying to punish you. He's aligning what your eyes can't see. He's working on timing that protects your soul, not just pleases your emotions. So breathe, step back, listen again. The Spirit isn't silent because he left. He's silent because rushing won't reveal what only time and trust can uncover. What if this season of delay is actually a season of preparation? What if the door hasn't opened yet? Because God is still shaping you for the weight of the blessing. The Spirit moves when peace is trusted more than pressure. And if you can wait with open hands and a quiet heart, you'll find that God was never late. He was always precise. Now let's close with the most hidden, most overlooked habit of all. The one that attracts the Spirit in ways the world will never understand. 7. The habit of obeying in secret. When no one sees, the Spirit manifests itself. There's a sacred kind of obedience that never gets applause. No stage, no spotlight, no recognition. Just you, a quiet choice, and heaven watching, and yet it's in those hidden places that the Spirit shows up the strongest. Because he's not drawn to performance, he's drawn to purity. The world celebrates what is seen, platforms, results, public devotion, but God watches what happens in the silence, the decision you made when no one else was around, the temptation you resisted when no one would have found out, the kindness you gave when no one said thank you. That's where the Spirit dwells. Obedience in secret is not weakness, it's spiritual maturity. It's doing the right thing, not because it feels good, not because someone will praise you, but because you love him. And when your heart says yes in the quiet, heaven moves loudly in your favor. Some doors in your life didn't open because of the prayers others saw you pray. They opened because of the integrity you chose in silence, the apology you made that cost your pride, the sacrifice no one celebrated. That's where the power of the Spirit is hidden. Jesus said, when you pray, go into your room and shut the door. Why? Because there are parts of your relationship with God that no one else should see, not out of shame, but out of intimacy. And in that room, in that secrecy, the Spirit breathes deeper. Don't underestimate the weight of your private obedience. Every time you forgive in silence, honor God in quiet, serve without recognition, you are building a sanctuary for the Spirit inside you, one decision at a time, one surrender at a time. Because the Spirit is not impressed by public passion, he is moved by private surrender, and your hidden faithfulness is echoing louder in heaven than any platform on earth. So hold this truth close. You don't need the world to see what God already saw, and you don't need applause to validate your obedience. The Holy Spirit is not attracted by noise. He is drawn to the still spaces of surrendered hearts, and maybe that's been your story all along. Quiet sacrifices, silent tears, private yeses, but heaven kept the record, and the Spirit has never been closer. Now that we've walked through these 7 habits, there's one more thing you need to hear. Let's finish where it all began. In the silence where transformation truly begins. Maybe your life doesn't look like revival. Maybe you don't feel spiritual. Maybe all you have is silence. But maybe that silence isn't empty. Maybe it's sacred. Maybe it's not the absence of God. It's the invitation to find him in a new way. Because the Holy Spirit isn't waiting for your perfection. He's waiting for your permission. Permission to move in places you've hidden. Permission to heal what you've silenced. Permission to take what you've held too tightly. These 7 habits, they're not loud. They don't demand applause. But they change everything. Quietly, consistently, deeply. And if you begin to live from that place, not of noise, not of panic, not of spiritual performance, but of stillness, surrender, and sacred obedience, you'll find that the Spirit was never far. He was just waiting for the door to open. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not broken beyond repair. You are in process. And the Spirit specializes in quiet transformations. So if all you have today is a weary heart, trembling hands, and a whisper of faith, that's enough. That's all he needs. Not your fire, just your flame, not your answers, just your attention. And in that stillness, that surrender, that sacred yes, the Holy Spirit will do what no emotion, no control, no crowd ever could. He will fill you, guide you, heal you, not with noise, but with presence. Because God is not impressed by how loud you cry, but how much you trust when all is silent. He's not asking you to fix everything. He's just asking you to be still enough so he can finally move. That's where your transformation begins, in the quiet, in the small, in the surrendered, and in that holy silence. Your life will never be the same. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't rush past it. Let it sit. Let it sink in. And if you know someone who's been trying to carry everything alone, who's been waiting for God in silence, send this to them. Let them know The Holy Spirit hasn't forgotten them either. And if you're ready to keep growing, keep healing, and keep walking with discernment and peace, stay close. Because what God is building in your silence is stronger than anything you've lost in the noise. You're not alone. You're just being led quietly, faithfully by the Spirit.